What is up, College Football Nation? We are back. We are back with another super exciting week. We nailed it last week, hit it out of the park, had a super profitable week. We're on a lot of the value plays. Some of our big hits, obviously all over Purdue's quarterback O'Connell in that passing game. We were all over the pass. Obviously, you always want to go against Michigan State, right? So hitting on two of two, and those receivers was huge. And we're going to do it again this week. I think there are some easy targets this week in a 14-game slate. Like, I am pretty zoned in on who I'm going after. I'm heading into this weekend with probably my highest confidence level of the year. So we're feeling good. We're attacking it. We're making more money. There also seems to be some mispricings this week. I think there's a few guys that just Draftkings messed up. I think there's a lot of value to be had here. And we're gonna go through it now, and we're gonna find that value, and we're gonna cash in. Let's get right to it. Let's break it down. There's a lot of games on Saturday on the main Draftkings slate, so there's going to be a lot of games to go through, but there's some clear teams to target. So we're going to try and go through what teams we want to target, who are the players to target on them, and what games we can feed, as they tend to be more defensive, lower scoring teams. So as always, we're going to pull up the depth charts and kind of walk right through them. First game on the slate, this Wake Forest Clemson game. So there's two lines of thought you can go with this game. I actually think, in my opinion, it's not going to be that high scoring. I think Clemson's defense can slow down this Wake Forest offense. Sam Hartman is way too expensive to play for me. The only other idea would be if you really think this Wake Forest team is just too good, and you want to go, this will be a high-paced game script, and you want to play Clemson, I can see it, but I just have very little faith in them. DJ has not looked very good. I don't love it, but I can understand the play because of his price tag. But for the most part, I think they've outpriced the Wake Forest against a pretty solid Clemson defense. I don't play anyone on the Wake Forest running game, and the receivers at 83 and 8,200. There's just better value here, so I'm going to pass. And on the Clemson side, I just don't have a lot of confidence in them. I maybe would have considered Chipley at running back, but they've priced him up too, so we can fade there. I think the most interesting with Justin Ross out, I think the most interesting angle here is going to be one of the two Collins brothers. I don't think they're actually Collins. I actually don't know if these kids are brothers or not. I doubt it, but I'm making it up. But there's two Collins. They're both, I think, relevant as they've been getting the bulk of the targets. So if you want, my preference would be Takari because he's 3,500. So if you want to take a shot on one of these guys, I think that's really the only folks that we can play here in this game. Now to this FSU BC game. This one actually has a lot of value in it. So I think there's some things to talk about here. So let's start with Jordan Travis, the Florida State quarterback. He's a quarterback and a running back. He can run for 100 yards and throw for 300. So he's definitely in play. I prefer him to Corbin, but Corbin, would be okay if you really like him. And then you don't have to play Travis with any of these receivers. This is not the most explosive passing game. You could play Travis alone. My favorite receiver to partner Travis with would probably be Parchment. But again, none of these guys jump off the page. You don't have to partner. I just like Parchment. He's the most affordable. He gets targets. If he catches a touchdown, he would easily meet value. On the Boston College side, probably the best value play of the week is going to be Phil Jurkovich at quarterback. The same thing. He's a dual threat quarterback. He runs a ton. He's a good runner. And he can throw it, and 4,500 is just a laughable price. So, you can get a team's quarterback who runs and throws at this price. It's a misprice. So, unfortunately, I think other people will see that too. I think it'll be pretty highly owned, but this is one of the best value plays of the weekend. I think Garwo is interesting. Garwo has been getting a bump in touches. So, if you wanted to give him a shot at 5,800, the price is right based on his price per touch. I probably wouldn't play Garwo and Jurkovich. You can do it in cash, but definitely not in a big tournament. On the receiving end, the two receivers here that are in play are going to be Zay Flowers and Jalen Gill. Zay Flowers is the main guy, but at 6,700, I think there's some other options that I'd prefer. But if you really want to partner with someone with Jurkovich, you can. You don't have to. Jurkovich can be played alone, so you don't play him naked. The cheaper option that would make sense is Jalen Gill, who's 4K. He has the ability to break off some big plays. He's low floor. He could goose egg for you, but he does have a high ceiling. And for the folks that tune in weekly as we're going through it, I know some of my loyal listeners, Miles. I know you're always in here. If you guys have any comments or questions, please do drop them in the chat. I'm happy to go through it, answer anyone's questions, and just see how you guys are doing. As always, let's take a look at this Iowa State-Oklahoma game. So again, this one is one we can play. There's some options here. Brock Purdy is in play for me this week. I think this Oklahoma team is okay against the run. Now, with that being said, I don't think anyone's really set up, maybe other than Georgia, to stop Breece Hall. I mean, Breece Hall is one of the best backs in the country. But at 9,400, this is a really high price tag. So he has to do a lot in this game. I think he can. But I think there's more value elsewhere. So I'm not going to be playing too much Hall, but I'm not opposed to you playing him. I prefer a Purdy stack here against an Oklahoma team who is pretty susceptible to pass. And from the receivers here, I love Hutchinson. It's 7,500. The price is probably fair. He may be a little pricey. There's some guys you could probably get at a better value, but I think Hutchinson makes sense. Jalen Noel would be the value play here. At 3,100, he's getting targets. He's almost minimum. So if you wanted to find a value play, low floor, but he's involved. And then, of course, there's always Charlie Kolar, who I think is going to be an NFL receiver at 4,500, NFL tight end. He's in play as well. On the Oklahoma side, I actually don't think that we're going to play anyone. This Iowa State defense is pretty solid, and these Oklahoma offensive players are priced up at 10K against this Iowa State defense. I'm not interested in Caleb. I think the most interested I'd be in Kennedy Brooks, but again, this is a tough defense. I think there's other players we could take that have more intriguing matchups. So I'm probably gonna fade Oklahoma here. I've on with the Purdy and Kolar stack always in play. I agree, especially in a tournament. Kolar is usually, I think, pretty affordable for his upside, but he does have a lot of kind of floor games. And Purdy too. Purdy has a big upside, but also does give you those floor games. I think this is a week where they can reach that upside, but there's definitely no guarantee there. Now, heading over to this Texas-West Virginia game, I think there's some interesting anecdotes here. On the West Virginia side, this passing game is just way too dispersed, way too many pass catchers, not that explosive. I wouldn't target the passing game, but I like Letty Brown a good deal. I think the price is definitely right against a very, very bad run defense in Texas. So Letty Brown is one of my prioritized favorite backs this week. And then on the Texas side, it's interesting. Bijan Robinson's one of the best backs in the country. He's out. So it looks like Roschon Johnson's going to be a primary back in a pretty good offense at 3,800. That's unreal value. This is a decent West Virginia team who can stop the run, but at 3,800 for a primary back on this Texas offense, this is just an insane value. So very much so in play is Roschon Johnson, someone I will be playing in a lot of my lineups. In addition to that, I like Xavier Worthy. They threw to him an absurd 22 times last week in one game. They threw to him 22 times. So if they're going to target him that much, if the idea is, without Bijan, they need to go to the air, then, he's just getting peppered with targets. So I certainly think Worthy's in play. Other than that, I probably won't be playing anyone else in this game. Now for this Purdue-West Virginia game, this one's going to be quick. Purdue Northwestern, excuse me. On the Northwestern side, I think Evan Hull could be interesting. Someone I would only want to play as a run back if I'm playing Aiden O'Connell and some of these Purdue guys. I also think Stephon Robinson at 4,500 is interesting. Again, both guys I think I'd want to have in a stack with Purdue guys. I wouldn't want to put them alone. But if you are stacking Purdue, I think those are the two guys you go with, Robinson or Hull. Now, on this Purdue side, I think there's a lot of value. I still think they're underpricing Aiden O'Connell. He's thrown for, over 40, almost 40 times each of the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's been playing really well. Now, he has had some really good matchups. I don't think this Northwestern team is a tough matchup. They just haven't played any good passing defenses, so it might look like they're tough against the pass, but they're not. They're a bad defense. They're going to get beat up. It's just a matter of how Purdue's going to score. They're going to score as much as they want. So O'Connell at 6,200, very much so in play. Now, with that being said, they're one of the worst run Ds in the country. So I think King DeRoe or Harvarth will have a big game. It's a matter of which one. I just have a feeling that it's Horvath's turn to kind of break out, and he's going to have a big game. At 3,400, again, another extreme value I'm very in on. If you still believe it's King DeRoe's backfield, then you can play him at 4,500, but my lean is toward Xander, so that's where I'm going to go at 3,400. Again, I'm going to go heavy. These are misprices. I think Horvath, if he does get a full load in what could be a blowout, I think he could have a pretty big day. And then, as always, David Bell, one of the best receivers in the country. He might be a first-round pick. With him out there throwing the ball, I think he's going to be heavily played by me. And Milton Wright as well, who has been peppered with almost 10 targets every week for the last couple of weeks. At 3,900, it feels like a mispricing. I think his highlight should be higher, so I'll be playing a lot of Milton Wright. Now, let's take a look at this, the fun one. Oh dear. Here we are. Michigan State, Ohio State. I will be glued to the screen for this. This is going to be a fun game to watch. And as you know, if you listen to my show every week we target the quarterback playing Michigan State. The last couple of weeks, it hasn't been, great quarterbacks. It was Aiden O'Connell. It was Tua. Now we're getting Ohio State's quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, one of the most explosive passing offenses in the nation, against one of the worst pass defenses I've ever seen. Not only that, to cover our tracks, this is a good Michigan State offense who should be able to keep this a game, which will keep Ohio State on the field for 4 quarters. And we saw what happens when that happens. They can go off for 50, some odd 60 points. The scoring never stops. So this game is going to be fun. I think it's going to be high scoring. I am in love with CJ Stroud. And my rule is normally don't play expensive quarterbacks. We can find value. Not this week. I think Stroud could go for 50. We're playing Stroud, and I'm playing him with multiple Ohio State pass catchers. So if you want to be contrarian and be different and play up for Travion Henderson 8,500 in a tournament, I'm okay with that. This Michigan State defense is good against the run, but I can see a path for Henderson getting there. On the pass catchers, I'm going to be as overexposed as I can to Wilson, Olave, and Smith-Njigba. I'm going to be playing them as much as I possibly can. I'm not going to have a lineup without at least one of them that I play at all. This Michigan State passing defense has not shown they can stop anyone, and that's not going to change this week. They're going to score through the air. There's 3 of them, so maybe one of them won't have a good day, but there will be some big value found here. So I even think these guys are underpriced. I think the price should have come up on them. So heavily target Ohio State here. On the Michigan State side, just because I think of the game script, I want to be invested. I prefer the passing game. Kenneth Walker is one of the best players in the country, but at 9,200, this Ohio State defense can stop the run. They're tough against the run. Stopping the run against most teams and stopping Kenneth Walker are 2 completely different things. So I do think Kenneth Walker can get there, but can he have a ceiling game at 9,200 against a pretty stout Ohio State defense? That's what I don't know. I prefer the value of Thorne at 7K, and then Jalen Reed, who's 6,500, more than affordable. I think he'll have a good game. I think Naylor's probably not going to play. If he's in, that changes things. I'd like Naylor, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play. And if Naylor's out, then sign me up for Trey Mosley, who will get some of those extra looks at 4,700. Now, let's take a look at this Penn State-Rutgers game. At this point, I think Rutgers is pretty close to unplayable. I mean, maybe Pacheco is a value running back. I think there's other value running backs in the slate that I like, but, we've seen that Pacheco can get you 2 scores. So Penn State's a tougher beast. I don't love him, but I can understand it at 4K. Bo Melton seems like more of a cash play than a GPP play for me. I think he's safe to get you 10, 15 points, but at 5,200, that's just about value. So nothing crazy there. Shameem Jones is the real play here at 3,500. If you need a value receiver, he can get there at close to the minimum. But for the most part, this is not a priority team to target. On the other side of this game, Penn State, they continue to underprice Sean Clifford. He's not running as much because of his injury, but this is not a Rutgers defense to be scared of. I think they're going to put up points. It's a matter of where you want to target it. So I think Clifford's in play at 6K. And then we can look at the running game. They kind of gave the reins over to Kavion Lee. He had a big game last week. He had like 20 carries for almost 100 yards. I think he's got an even better matchup here against Rutgers. Another extreme value play, one I like a lot. I think Penn State wants to establish the run. I don't know why they've underpriced him so much. So another guy I'm going to cram in as a value running back. So now I've given you 3, and there's still one more I'm going to give you. So there's 4 running backs this week under 4K that I think are value. So we can cram them in, and then that's how we can play our Strouds and some of those more expensive receivers. And then, if you're going to play the Penn State passing game, Dotson's obviously the number 1 receiver, but he's priced up, deservingly so. And then Parker Washington I like as well at 4K. I actually think he's underpriced as well. They've been throwing to Parker Washington a lot. He's the number 2 option. At 4K, I thought he should have been closer to 5, so I think this is a good value here on Washington. Now, let's take a look at this Iowa-Illinois game. There's really nothing to look at. I wouldn't play anyone on Iowa on Illinois against Iowa, against their pretty stout Iowa defense. I guess I could see Goodson having a game at 6,500. You could play him. I don't love him, but I could see it. So Goodson can get you there. And, at tight end, they do throw to Laporta a lot at 4K. He could be a value. Not someone I would prioritize in what I would think would be a lower scoring game, but those would be the only 2 guys I would consider here. This Notre Dame Georgia Tech game, again, I'm going to be pretty light here as well. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs on Georgia Tech, who's been pretty consistent, gets a lot of touches. 6,600, the price is probably a little high, but he's playable. On the Notre Dame side, Kyron Williams I like a lot. 8K is expensive, but this Georgia Tech team is not a very good defense. I think he's going to get a ton of usage. The only concern with Kyron is if this game gets out of hand and he doesn't play, 4 quarters. And on the receiving end, Michael Mayer at 5,600, the price is right. This is an NFL tight end. You can play him for sure. They'll score a lot of points. And a nice value play could be Brandon Lindsay at 3,300. He found the end zone last week. He doesn't need to do much to meet value at 3,300. So definitely a value play there. Now, this Arkansas-Bama game, it's an interesting one. I don't like Arkansas. I think this Bama defense will be able to slow them down. So I don't think I'm going to play anyone on the Arkansas side. On the Bama side, I think Bryce Young is priced up too high for my liking, so I don't want to play him. I'd rather play Stroud. Bijan Robinson I'll play. 9K is really expensive. I think there's some better value to be found, but Robinson can certainly go off. So I'll sprinkle a few shares of him in there, but my concern is not on the player, it's on the price. So if you really love him, play him, but you figure out how you're going to afford other guys at that 9K price range. Then at receiver, Jamison Williams seems to be the guy for me. I will play some Jamison Williams. He can definitely go off. Mechie, you can sneak in there as well, but for the most part, I won't be interested in any other pass catchers here. I like some of the value plays on other teams, but if you want to sprinkle Williams or Mechie, I would be okay with it. Now for this SMU Cincinnati game, I think, again, there's some targets here. I think this is the game you can play Ritter against an SMU team that can't stop a nosebleed through the air. I think, Ford might be banged up. If he doesn't get his full workload, they might need to go to the air more, which is music to Ritter's ears. So I think there's a lot of paths for Ritter to get there this year, and his prices come down to being a little bit more reasonable. It's still a little high for what I like for quarterback, but this is the dream matchup. Like I said, I have questions around for his health. So at 8,400, I would need to know he's going to play the full game. And then at receiver, Alec Pierce at 7,600. He's their go-to guy. I do think he's going to have a good game, but there's better value at this range for the volume he gets. So I would prefer trying to get budget, maybe taking a shot on Michael Young, but my preferred dart to throw would be on Trey Tucker at 3,500, who last game got a handful of targets. He could be the one that pops where you can really get value there. On the SMU side, this is a pretty tough Cincinnati defense. I don't love playing Mordecai at 8,700 against Cincinnati. There are some value in some of these pass catchers. I prefer going with like a Roberson maybe or a Goffney if they're still injured up, if Gray doesn't play. Goffney was involved at a minimum price. He's then, but make sure that Gray's not playing. Don't play Goffney if they're fully healthy. But the main value here is going to be Ulysses Bentley. Ulysses Bentley is a top back in the country when he's healthy. He's had a pretty bad injury, which has kept him sidelined for a lot of the season. He came back last week and got the majority of the carries, and he's still priced in the 3K range. I think this is a mistake, a misprice, and I'm going to play him against a tough Cincinnati defense. Another one of those value plays that I'm going to be very overweight on. So I love Bentley. I think he's my favorite of the bunch. And so now that's 4 running backs in the 3K range that I think are super valuable that we can hammer in and kind of boost up our lineups elsewhere. So Bentley, 3,800 seems like a misprice to me. I think he's back to being the leader of this backfield. Maybe he will split still with Sigers, but he got plenty of touches to be worth playing. Now for this UV Pitt game, the big question mark here is Brennan Armstrong. Pitt looked pretty bad without him last week. If he doesn't play again, I don't know. I'm sorry. Virginia looked bad without him. If he doesn't play again, I don't think they're going to look very good with Jay Woolfolk. If Armstrong plays, I'm also concerned how healthy he is. I want to make sure we're getting all of him. I won't be interested in playing him because of his price tag. It's a little too high for me. But if he does play, I will be more interested in their pass catchers. I think their pass catchers will be interesting. If he doesn't play, the only guy that I think makes sense to me is Keaton Thompson, who ex-quarterback, converted tight end. They give him carries. They throw him the ton. Even without Armstrong, you can play Thompson. You'll need Armstrong to play anyone else on the Virginia side. On the Pittsburgh side, Kenny Pickett will play. This Virginia defense is not strong. Kenny Pickett's been great. I don't see Virginia being able to slow them down, even at the 9,100 price tag. I also like Israel Abanikanda, who's kind of taking the lead as the main back in Pittsburgh. 5,300, he's plenty affordable. And I think Virginia is probably even worse against the run against pass. They're just a bad defense altogether. But, yeah, you're going to want some shares of this Pittsburgh offense. So a budget way to get there is getting Abanikanda. And then I really like Jordan Addison. He feels almost underpriced against a pretty bad Virginia defense. It seems very likely Jordan Addison gets there. He's in the same caliber as most of these Ohio State receivers for me this week. So get the 3 main Ohio State guys and Addison and as many of your lineups as you possibly can. And then the value plays on here are Jackie Louis and Jared Wayne, who are more affordable receivers on the Pitt side. If you are going to cram in getting Pickett into your lineups, you can play them with him to go along with Addison if you'd like. To wrap it up, we got this Michigan-Maryland game. And this one's easy. You can't play – I wouldn't play anyone on Maryland against this pretty tough Michigan defense. Yeah, I think Maryland's a complete fade for me. And then the only guy I would look at on Michigan is Haskins. With Corum out, he should get 30 touches at least. And at 30 touches at 7,600, I would much rather him than some of those 9 or 9,500 running backs that it's just really expensive. It's hard to afford and get all these guys. We can still fit in Haskins with some of these other value running backs and still play those big-time passing teams that we want to target this week. So the only guy here to target, again, is Haskins. I wouldn't play anyone else in this game. That is a wrap for this week. Like I said, we're really focused on the Ohio State passing game. We're focused on getting some shares of Pittsburgh, and there's 4 value running backs that we can go after that are in the 3K range that I think are just majorly underpriced. Go cram them into your lineups, play the big passing attacks, get, Bell, get the big 3 at Ohio State, play Jordan Addison, get these value running backs in, whether it's Ulysses Bentley on SMU. You can feel free to play one of the backs, Hovarth on Purdue. So there's plenty of value here. Just to reiterate, the main value plays that I've listed for you guys. Let me just pull it up on my screen so I can run it back for you. Hovarth, Roshan Johnson on Texas, Kavion Lee on Penn State, and Bentley on SMU. So keep an eye on them. Get them in your lineups. Come back next week. Show me how much money you've made. I'm pumped to see it. Like I said, I'm as confident as I've been going to this week. This week we're gonna hit. Good luck, fam.